The markets are closed, but the business stories are just heating up. Hello, I'm Raine Musñgi. Catch up with us on Business Brief. Once the United States has imposed tariffs on its major trade partners, it could engage in bilateral talks with countries on new trade arrangements. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said on Sunday the Trump administration's tariffs on various countries were not meant to be hostile, but rather aimed at establishing trade equity. This comes after Trump threatened on Thursday to slap a 200% tariff on wine, cognac, and other alcohol imports from Europe, opening a new front in a global trade war that has roiled financial markets and raised recession fears. Rubio said the United States would retaliate against nations that had imposed tariffs on it. Without giving details of what the new deals could look like, Rubio said the U.S. would reset the baseline to ensure it was treated fairly.
This is not meant as a hostile move against Japan or Germany or anybody else. This is not about, this is about balancing and fairness in trade. So he wants to reset the baseline, and once that baseline is reset, then you can enter into bilateral negotiations with individual countries about changes that can be made to our trade, our bilateral trade, so that it's fair for both sides.
Meanwhile, French Prime Minister François Bayrou says the European Union was probably mistaken when it targeted American whiskey in retaliation for U.S. tariffs. He called for talks to avoid more damaging duties on France's cognac industry.
Have some missteps been made? Yes, probably, because Kentucky bourbon has been included as if it were a trade threat because a very old product list has been retrieved without it being checked like it should have been. It is indeed at the level of the European Commission. We have 15 days ahead of us to try to find a way, and we have been working for weeks to try to find a way with China for this production, which has introduced substantial customs duties, and with the United States on this issue.
Well, U.S. President Donald Trump says he will speak with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday in a push for an end to the 3-year war in Ukraine. Bloomberg reports Trump said there was good chance for a deal. When asked what concessions he sought, the American leader said much of the discussion will be on land.
Well, I think we'll, be talking about land. It's a lot of land. It's a lot different than it was before the wars, And we'll be talking about land. We'll be talking about power plants, because that's up, that's a big question. But I think we have a lot of it already discussed very much by both sides.
You'll ask him.
Ukraine and Russia.
You'll ask him.
We're already talking about that, dividing up certain assets. Yeah, and they've been working on that.
Meanwhile, Yemen's Houthi fighters retaliate against U.S. airstrikes. The group's spokesperson said on Sunday that they targeted the U.S. aircraft carrier USS Harry Truman and its warships in the Red Sea with ballistic missiles and drones in response to the U.S. attacks. However, no evidence was provided to support this claim. He also stated that they would resume attacks on Israeli ships passing through the Red Sea if Israel did not lift its block on aid entering Gaza. The U.S. Central Command said its forces were continuing operations against Yemen's Houthis on Sunday after Washington said it will keep striking the group until it ends attacks on shipping. The airstrikes, which the Houthi-run health ministry said killed at least 53 people, are the biggest U.S. military operation in the Middle East since President Donald Trump took office in January. One U.S. official told Reuters the campaign might continue for weeks. The Houthis, who have taken control of most of Yemen over the past decade, said they had launched course of attacks on shipping after Israel's war with Hamas began in late 2023, saying they were acting in solidarity with Gaza's Palestinians. The United Nations, for its part, has called for restraint and a cessation of all military activities in the region. Asian shares climbed after Wall Street's gained and Beijing pledged more steps to revive consumption, while U.S. equity futures slid as Treasury U.S. Secretary Scott Bessent dismissed the market's recent decline as healthy. Hong Kong's Hang Seng opened higher than pair gains, while onshore counterparts fluctuated after the Chinese government announced a special action plan to boost consumption by boosting people's incomes, and as data showed, the country's housing slump worsened. Meanwhile, Japan's benchmark Nikkei 225 and South Korea's Kospi index gained about 1%, while Australia's ASX 200 was last seen trading at about 0.5% higher. Oil rose gain for a second day, benefiting from optimism that demand from top importer China will rise. The dollar was also steady as Wall Street is headed for a big markets week. The Federal Reserve is widely expected to hold interest rates steady at the conclusion of its latest policy meeting Wednesday. Dow Jones Industrial Average futures slid 0.2%, while the S&P 500 futures and Nasdaq dipped 0.25% each. In the recent market sell-off, the valuations of big technology companies have fallen from lofty heights. Many traders, though, are betting that the declines may well have further to go, and recent history offers evidence to back them up. Former hedge fund manager Bessent is not worried, saying markets will recover in the long term amid a good tax policy, deregulation, and energy security. U.S. President Donald Trump moves to cut funding for the U.S.-funded media outlet Voice of America, or VOA. Nearly 1,300 journalists, producers, and assistants were put on administrative leave over the weekend, leaving their futures uncertain. Founded in 1942 to counter Nazi propaganda, Voice of America now reaches 360 million people a week, providing critical views and information globally. Its parent agency, the U.S. Agency for Global Media, employs 3,500 people and broadcasts in more than 50 languages. The White House says this cut is a move against propaganda, but critics worry that it signals a threat to press freedom and could erode the U.S.'s credibility on global information. We have to pause for a few reminders, but the biggest business stories from around the country and the market's closing data are up next. Keep it here on Business Brief, only on the Bilyonaryo News Channel. Welcome back to Business Brief. A global food and biotechnology company is working to reduce its environmental impact and lead the way forward. Here's a report from Soo-Jin Kim joining us on the line. Soo-Jin, go ahead.
Yes, Raine. Ajinomoto Philippines Corporation is ramping up its sustainability initiative. The company set ambitious targets aiming to reduce its environmental impact by 50%. With the help of Asian Energy, Ajinomoto has transitioned its factories in Bulacan and Cebu to 100% renewable energy, achieving zero Scope 2 carbon emissions and cutting over 5,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions annually. The company has also partnered with Fast Logistics and Mober Philippines to introduce electric vehicles in its supply chain, further reducing its carbon footprint. In support of a circular economy, Ajinomoto is working to minimize plastic waste by implementing down gauging, shifting to monomaterial packaging, and eliminating tertiary plastic packaging. Meanwhile, Ajinomoto affirms that sustainability is a continuous journey, with its 2030 EV goals serving as a guiding principle. Through innovation and collaboration, the company aims to lead the way toward a greener and more sustainable future. And those are the latest updates from Makati City. Back to you, Raine.
Thank you so much for that report, Soo-Jin Kim. Overseas Filipino workers sent home a record $38.3 billion in personal remittances in 2024, marking an almost 3% increase from the previous year. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas reports December 2024 alone saw remittances reach $3.73 billion, contributing significantly to the annual total. Cash remittances coursed through banks totaled $34.5 billion for the year, also about a 3% rise from 2023. The United States remained the largest source of these funds, followed by Singapore and Saudi Arabia. These inflows play a crucial role in supporting household consumption, bolstering foreign exchange reserves, and maintaining economic stability. The Philippines' external debt reached a record $137.6 billion as of December 2024, as both the government and private sector took on more loans to meet financing needs. But the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas says the country's debt level remains manageable relative to the economy. The debt-to-GDP ratio dropped to 29.8% from 30.6% in the third quarter, signaling that the economy is growing faster than its debt burden. What does this mean for Filipinos? Higher debt stock could weaken the peso if investors worry about repayment risks, making imported goods more expensive. On the flip side, government borrowing can fund infrastructure and social programs, potentially boosting economic growth and jobs, as long as the money is spent wisely. One driver of higher debt is foreign investors buying $3.37 billion in Philippine debt securities. This was partly offset by a $1.39 billion drop due to foreign exchange fluctuations. Among the biggest lenders to the Philippines, Japan leads with $15.18 billion, followed by Singapore at $5 billion and the Netherlands at over $4 billion. The arrest of former President Rodrigo Duterte by the International Criminal Court is expected to have little impact on the Philippine financial markets and economy. That's according to Professor Dindo Manhit, President and CEO of Strat-based Group. Manhit even suggests that Duterte's arrest could strengthen the Philippines' global standing as it shows the country's commitment to due process and human rights. Duterte's allies and supporters have held protests nationwide, but Manhit downplays the chances of widespread unrest. While political tensions remain, experts say business and investor confidence are unlikely to be affected. The Philippine Economic Zone Authority has unveiled the country's top IT BPM companies, with many choosing MegaWorld's developments for their operations. Global firms such as JP Morgan Chase & Company, Accenture, Concentrix, and Cognizant are among the top players in the industry. 11 of the top 15 IT BPM companies operate within MegaWorld's townships nationwide. MegaWorld is on track to expand its office spaces to 2 million square meters in the next 5 years. JP Morgan is set to double its office space in Uptown Bonifacio, and reports indicate that Elon Musk's X, formerly Twitter, is establishing operations in McKinley West. Additionally, another major U.S.-based consumer company is planning to occupy significant office space in Bonifacio Global City. Maynilad Water Services is preparing for what could be the Philippines' largest initial public offering, potentially raising up to 49 billion pesos. The company filed a registration statement with the Securities and Exchange Commission and a listing application with the Philippine Stock Exchange. It aims to offer 1.78 billion primary common shares to the public, with an additional 36.31 million shares for First Pacific Company. The IPO, with a share price of up to 20 pesos each, is set to occur between June 25 and July 2, with the listing expected on July 10th. Maynilad is the largest private water concessionaire in the Philippines, managed by Maynilad Water Holdings, a joint venture including Metro Pacific Investments, or MPI, DMCI Holdings, and Marubeni Corporation. Manila Water Company finished the day higher by 5.48%. Meanwhile, Philippine shares advanced for a third day, rallying back to the 6,300 level. The main index rose 0.2% to 6306, but still the worst performer in Asia. Advancers narrowly edged out decliners 94 to 92, with value turnover reaching 5.2 billion pesos. The services sector pushed up the market, gaining 1.57%, with telco Converge and port operator ICTSI share prices adding at least 3%. Meanwhile, at the foreign exchange market, the peso is currently trading at 57 pesos and 22 centavos to the greenback, stronger than Friday's close of 57.25. And that's a wrap for today's Business Brief. I'm Raine Musñgi. Join us again tomorrow as we bring you the stories that help you plan your next big, bold moves in business, only here on the Bilyonaryo News Channel. Always on top.